Just a little after 1 o'clock. All right, welcome everybody to this afternoon's Finance and Administration meeting. Communication, if you are looking online right now, watching us online through YouTube, you're going to see that the first thing on our agenda today is actually the Outdoor Discovery Center update from Dave Nitre. And in an effort to accommodate his schedule, we actually took his update in our first meeting today. So if you'll refer back to the Planning and Policy meeting for March 11, you'll see towards the end of that meeting his fantastic update, and I'd encourage you to watch that there. So because that has been accomplished already, we get to move right to public comment. So I'd like to open the floor to anyone that would like to address us. And seeing none, we will move right on to the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, we're moving right along. Consent resolutions, we're going to approve the minutes from the February 11, 2025 Finance and Administration Committee meeting.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
To our first item on the agenda, it's the statement of review. The suggested motion is to approve the statement of review.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we
Let's
need a
move
roll-
on
I think we have to
to,
take a roll call. on that.
no, we've got some money in there.
Oh.
So Rachel, would you mind calling the roll?
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Barry, Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Rachel. Moving on to number 2, the accounts payable for January 31, 2025 through February 28, 2025. The suggested motion is to approve the general claims in the amount of $18,707,333.63 as presented by the summary report for January 31, 2025 through February 28, 2025.
So moved.
Any discussion?
Mm-mm.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We need a roll call on that one.
What, last
tried,
meeting
but
just
it-
threw me off. Yes, absolutely, we need a roll call. Thank you.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Motion passes.
Moving forward to the Tyler Technologies License and Service Agreement renewal. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the annual renewal of the Tyler Technologies License and Services Agreement contract for a total cost of $114,911.
So moved.
Support.
And do we have anybody here that would like to speak to that today? Fantastic. Come on forward. Welcome.
Yeah, it was a review of the contract, the previous contract. We were able to jettison a couple of modules within Tyler that we didn't use, which actually lowered the annual maintenance cost. And it's just a pretty standard continual of the annual maintenance for Tyler and Munis.
This remains in budget. Any questions from my commissioners? No? All right, let's do a roll call vote. Rachel?
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Moving to number 4, the Merit Internet upgrade. The suggested motion. I'll go to the vice chair to read this one.
Motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the distributed denial of services, DDoS, protection service agreement with Merit Network, upgrading to a 5-year agreement, terminating and replacing the prior 3-year agreement. The initial request includes new equipment, installation, and network access, along with annual fees for service and support.
So moved. Support.
Fantastic. Any discussion on this one? Let's
Uh,
go to Commissioner Jordsma.
Why the move from 3 years to 5 years? Do we get a discount or?
Yeah, the, the equipment that was gonna be, that needs to be replaced to get us to a higher speed, they threw that in if we went with a 5-year contract. about a net increase of $8,900 a year to move from 1 gig to 3 gig to increase bandwidth for our SaaS applications, body worn cameras. And then we have a pilot project through the courts where they're going to be pumping up all their video and audio to the cloud so they can do AI dictation or AI transcription. So,
Who doesn't like better internet?
exactly.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you happen to know if that reduces some of their other transcription needs then?
That's what they're hoping. So they're entering a pilot project with Oakland County, and I forgot the name of the, it's supposed to streamline. I guess there's a county in Ohio that has implemented it and they've cut their, I guess there's a 24-hour period they have to get a transcriptions out. So this is to help with that. So.
Okay,
yeah,
nice,
great.
thanks.
All right, it looks like we are ready for a roll call.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes,
Motion passes.
Commissioners.
thank you.
Thank you.
And now we get to have a visit from our sheriff. Let me read the motion for us. This is a position upgrade request to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from Sheriff's Office to upgrade 1 court services deputy to 1 jail sergeant at a cost of $28,790.
So moved.
Support.
Let's have some discussion. Would you like to talk to us first a little bit about the request and
Well, as you've seen in your packet, there is a report from our correction staff that outlines kind of the need. I guess, I don't know how deep you want to get into the weeds on our operational details, but I will gladly kind of explain the fact. Right now, we have 12-hour shifts, the majority of our operations side. There's 2 sides of corrections, operations, and court services. On the operations side, they're on 12s, and right now there is a sergeant in charge of both day shifts. There's 2 shifts, obviously, to take up the whole week. When one of those sergeants goes on vacation during the week, there is a court services sergeant that can pick up some of that slack, but he's in charge of the 13 positions that we have at court services already. So we have a span of control issue already. Also on the weekends, we don't have that. So we either have to offer it up as overtime, or as happened this weekend, we have a senior deputy running the entire jail operations, which at one time wasn't really the end of the world, but at this point, with how young our members are, it's getting to be more of a liability than we're comfortable with. This was something that we identified last year and during our budget season, attempted to get one of these jail sergeant positions. However, as we began getting closer to being fully staffed, which we are hoping, depending on background outcomes, we're getting closer to, we started looking at our efficiencies and saw that maybe one of these court services spots may not be needed as much as that supervision. And so instead of asking you for the full amount, we were just asking for the enhanced.
I know one question that I had on this one is the court services deputy position going away with this?
Oh, yeah, this will be, that one spot will be enhanced, so that will no longer be in the court services group
So this is trading 1-for-1 position
with just the added
with a
amount.
pay raise.
Yes.
Okay.
This raises an issue for all of these items that we're going to be talking about here. So from my perspective, if it's in the budget, we don't, as a board, need to get micromanaging your administration, right? Do your thing, stay within the budget. If not, move it into the new budget, unless there's an emergency, then come to us. But I don't think the board needs to be involved in your day-to-day, nor at all. That's why you're in that position. So I appreciate what you just said to Jacob there, of your analysis of balancing your budget, right? It's what you're doing here. based
Yeah,
on your
and
needs.
ultimately, yes, it'll be in an additional $28,000, which for this year, we have in vacancy savings, given our shortcomings in our staffing. And then it would be for next year, that additional amount would have to be made up. So just to make sure that I don't stand here and act like I'm being disingenuous to all of you, that this was addressed in the budgetary process. However, it was not approved. None of our positions were. And so we just tried to find a way that we could maybe get to where we need to by giving up what, may not be necessary. So trying to be efficient and fiscally responsible with the money that's allotted to us. So, but thank you.
I just don't think the board should be in. I think the message to the department heads is stay within your budgets, unless it's an emergency, right? That's the message, and we trust you to do that. And
Appreciate that.
I
Thank you
appreciate
for
what you're
that
doing,
trust.
Eric. I know you guys have got some big strains right now you're dealing with. So.
Yeah, and I'm on a separate note, I look forward to seeing you all at the abbreviated CPA that we'll be putting on, if you can make it over. If not, I appreciate all of you that reached out, that begin having coffees with me so that we can begin discussions on where we can all go as a county. So thank you for all that engagement. I really appreciate it. And I apologize. I've missed some because I was sick. You've missed some. That flu kicked most of our backsides around, but I'm glad to see you're all here and healthy. So.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner
I
Rhodey?
do have a comment in, related to what you said. So not related so much to, your position in general, but historically, the board does approve each new position. And I think part of that might be, Karen, you can probably clarify this, but I might not be remembering it right, but I think that some of those things are outlined in the budget, and that the way things have been voted on when we're approving budgets is that we're approving staffing at a certain level, and the composition of the budget as they have proposed, that's what we're approving as a Board of Commissioners. And so when there are changes to staffing levels or to positions, that's why it's being brought back here, because we voted to approve a budget which was structured in a particular way. And so then these things are changing the budget. That's why we vote on, budget ratifications and budget adjustments. I understand what you're saying about, the flexibility and all of that, but I think that is why we have the positions come before us for approval, is because we're approving those things in the budget when we pass the budget.
When we go through the budget process, because you guys have been through it and we haven't, those will be interesting discussions to figure out what that role is for the board, especially for us new commissioners to understand that. Because in the end, these guys have their departments to run. But where our oversight is, I'm looking forward to that review.
Yeah. So I just think that that's probably a different discussion that has to take place.
Yeah.
Differentiations between department heads and elected offices and what that entails for all of us.
That's a good
Yeah.
point too. That's a great point.
I think these directors know my position on budget creep and how we've been having those conversations and making sure that we stay within budget, and you guys have so far done so. You mentioned the vacancies, that we're saving a lot of money just because of that, and that's allowing you to have this increase to fix this issue. Plus, the position is going away, so it's a 1-for-1. And with the savings in the department, you're able to cover this and still remain in budget. So that's fiscally responsible, and we appreciate that.
If I can,
Mr.
as
Rosma.
we move into next budget year, I think the department heads will have a better understanding on when they can come to the board, and if it's covered within their budget, if it's a grant, if it may be the result of a wage and salary schedule study. If it's going to come out of the general fund, then I believe it should come to the board for additional approval. But, so much of this stuff could be handled, at the county administration level.
And I'm expecting a lot of conversation around this once we start receiving the results back from Baker Tilly with the wage study that they're performing. So we hope to be helpful in giving you good instruction on how to work with us better in regards to these requests.
And there may be some county policy then, if that's, something people might want to take a look at. How should we be doing this, or how do we want to do this? And we should take a look at what is county policy and do any changes need to be made there.
Great.
Good point. Any further discussion? Looking up, looking down, I don't see any, so let's call the roll.
Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma.
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
motion passes.
Great.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next up is number 6, the community mental health position request. And the suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from Community Mental Health to add the new position of a 1.0 FTE mental health clinician, pay grade 10, paid for by grant funds.
So moved.
Support.
Right, with that, we can have some discussion. If you'd like to talk to us a little bit about this request first, that'd be great.
I could do that. So this position is funded through our System of Care grant. That is a 4-year grant. We're currently in year 2. And it is to provide services to Ottawa County youth from birth to 21 years old and their families who are living in poverty, experiencing or at risk of serious emotional disturbance and or abuse, or are underserved by current community services. So this grant is promoting family engagement, youth-guided activities, and improving the countywide approach for at-risk youth. So this clinician, we're adding to meet the requirements of the grant to better coordinate services with our community partners, including the Department of Health and Human Services, local school districts, Ottawa County Juvenile Court, to again support that well-coordinated approach for people and youth who are at risk. So this position is grant funded. There is a match that's required with it. That match is funded through the mental health millage. So no county general funds are used to fund this position. It is funded through a mix of the grant and the millage funding.
What happens when we get to year 4 of 4? Does that person roll off? Do we have to pay for that out of general fund dollars?
So these positions would be sunsetted. Any grant position at community mental health is sunsetted if the grant goes away.
Excellent.
This is actually the second 4-year round of this grant for us. So we would intend on reapplying for the grant if it was still available and if we still had activities we needed to do to meet the grant requirements.
And is that standard practice, Mr. Administrator, that with grant-funded positions, because this question's been asked several times in the last few years, and it's always been sunsetted based on the renewal of the grant or the performance of the grant?
They're sunsetted unless they can be approved in the upcoming budget year.
Okay.
And is there eligibility requirements? You said for youth experiencing poverty, but is that a Medicaid requirement? I guess why is this a different route than they would normally go to and they go to CMH?
Yeah, it allows us to work with other groups to help meet needs in the community. So it's not necessarily working with kids who are receiving our services. The clinician will be working with people receiving our services. The grant has other staff associated with it that are doing a lot more community outreach. And that allows us to work with more than just our sort of narrow population.
Thank you.
Commissioner Teeples.
So I appreciate that this is a requirement of the grant
Mhm.
and that it's going to sunset after the grant expires and that the employee isn't guaranteed employment after that unless we do otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So, but we all know now that grants are questionable going forward. And I just wanted to give you my perspective again on this kind of thing. So grants, in my mind, I mean, I heard it expressed the other day, grants are great for wants, but it's different than need. And I just don't want these employees to have unfair, set their expectations in the wrong way.
Mhm.
They understand their jobs, they're going to potentially lose their job when the grant expires. And we as budgets, as the department heads move ahead and they start to rely on grants, they have to be really careful. And I think we as a board need to be really careful not to create assurances beyond whatever the grant provides.
Mhm.
And everybody needs to understand that. Because they're like a one-time shot. And if you can get it, great. But if you can't, there's no guarantees for anybody, including employment. And I just want to make sure that the administration knows that across the, because that's to be a position I will take going forward on grants. We need to be really careful, especially now.
That's typically been our position, I don't know, for the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, because we all operated off grants and when they come sunsetted, the department head really has to look for other grants or other opportunities to fund. The difference between CMH is they don't get a tremendous amount of county funding to begin with. So the director is going to have to find it with either within their budget, maybe prioritize different positions, maybe join some positions, because the pool of money he budgets from is really the Medicare. So, I think he probably understands more so than a lot of the department heads that can just easily go to the county general fund and suspect that they're going to get funded there. So,
We know that we won't.
Yeah,
So, yeah. And our supervisors, when they're interviewing for these positions, are very upfront with the candidates. So when we offer, we're making sure that people know this is a grant-funded position. And the current environment, I think things are questionable, but we also have to keep moving forward with a grant that we have a signed agreement in place with SAMHSA. So.
Commissioner Wenzel.
And would you mind just, for curiosity's sake, elaborating a little bit on what type of community outreach it is?
Yes, I will. I do not run the day-to-day of this program. So the community outreach is one of our staff who has a system of care advisory board that they bring together that includes different departments that are providing services to children and youth in our area. So they're meeting together to determine what needs are in the community. And then we have staff who continue to do more outreach with those departments, with the schools, to make sure that we're educating about what we do and what's available for families in the community.
Do you have any examples of what the availabilities would be for?
The availability like of our services.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would be telling people about what we do, so the services that we provide by calling our access center, you can connect to our services. It also would be educating families about other mental health providers that are in the community so that they know who they can get in touch with.
Thank you.
I think we can go to Commissioner Rohde if you still have a question.
Yeah, and also just looking at this paperwork, it says this position will serve as a primary contact for juvenile court, school districts, and children's protective services when coordinating for high-risk youth. So that does maybe sound like it's, very much referrals from within those systems.
Yes,
Not
yep.
so much like parents reaching out.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah. So for this position, they can make the referrals directly to us and then get linked up with the clinician.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was just gonna note that as far as our grants go, the county, I think we might be as high as 50% funded, right around there with grants. So, so I appreciate, that we have to be careful with grants, but it is also, very substantial. So we'll have to keep that in mind as well. It's a huge part of how we do things as a county.
Yeah, and for CMH, we have in total around $5 million annually in grants that are coming in. So it's not quite 50% of our budget.
Yep, you guys are in better shape for sure.
So it's less than 10% for us.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? All right, let's call the roll.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mr. Dritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Rohde,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
motion passes.
Commissioner Jortsma, would you like to read the next motion for us?
Yes. Let me scroll back. to
Surprising you
Where it's
on the
written down.
Yeah.
I could see you're deep in thought.
Motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from Community Mental Health to upgrade the position of one FTE Community Health Worker, pay grade 3, to the Community Navigator Aide, pay grade 7, paid for with grant funds.
Support.
Second.
All right. Would you like to talk a little more about this one?
Yes, I can do that. So I won't go back over the system of care grant. This is for the same grant. We currently have 2 community health workers embedded onto our family services team. One is funded through a different source. This one has been funded through the system of care. This request is to upgrade that position to a community navigator. So it's a pretty minimal cost, but it will allow this person to continue to do community health work, but then will also be more involved with working with youth who are transitioning into adulthood, which in our service array changes which team you receive services from. So if you're moving from youth to adult, you might go to our adult teams, you're going to have totally different people to work with, or you might go out to a community provider if you no longer meet the level of care for our system. So this position will help coordinate that transition for people to make it smoother instead of being, oh, you're 18 and you don't have a good plan in place.
There is a gap there for that transitional age. So
Yes. Yeah.
I understand the need.
Yeah. So we're trying to bridge that gap with this position.
If we're ready to vote, I'll ask Rachel to call the roll.
Mr. Druitzma,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Ziostra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, that brings us to number 8. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the request from Community Mental Health to upgrade the position of 1 FTE Mental Health Supervisor, pay grade 13, to the Director of Crisis Services, pay grade 15.
So moved.
Discussion. I think we're going to come to you first. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a position that is being funded through our CCBHC. So that is our Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic demonstration program that is funded through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. That program allows us access to an enhanced payment through Medicaid to cover services. And as part of that program, we are required to stand up, and I briefly mentioned this morning, the 9 core services. So that includes crisis services, assessment, targeted case management, planning, getting people linked and coordinated to resources. So part of that is that 24/7 crisis. And in the requirements for demonstration, we have to stand up a 24/7 mobile crisis team. We currently offer children's mobile crisis Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. until 12 a.m. We are not covering for all ages all 24 hours. We have CIT, so that's our crisis intervention team that's working with the Sheriff's Department doing co-response, that's responding during the day, during Monday through Friday. So we need to fully stand up this 24/7 mobile crisis all evening, all night, and then on the weekends, which for us to do that in a planned and thoughtful way, we need a director who can actually lead the charge for this because this is a big system change for us. So we're hoping to utilize staff that we have in place. We might be bringing forward requests for FY26 as we move forward with that budget to build out that team, but we need a director in place to make determinations on, okay, what do we really need in place to get this going? As part of that, we are on a corrective action plan with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and I think that was included in your packet. In that plan, we had high hopes that we would have this position in place in January and a team stood up by April. We don't think we're going to have the whole team stood up by April, but if this position's approved, we will start that work and start working to address that cap so that we can become in compliance with that program.
Mr. Administrator, is it correct that these positions will all be looked at during the wage study?
Yes, that's correct.
So with that, when the wage study information comes back, how do you use that? Because these are all FTEs, do you assign that position a new pay grade scale? It might move from 13 to 14 or 13 to 11 based upon what we decide from the information from the wage study, or how is that?
Maybe Scott can address that, and I know Karen and I had talked, is CMH automatically a part of that wage study, or?
Yes, good afternoon, commissioners and board. Yes, the way that will work is it will have that independent review on all the positions with our vendor, and then we'll make those decisions accordingly based on the information we're receiving, and then the myself and our administration, HR and administration, and making those decisions. So it is possible, Chair Bonema, that could change from 13 to 14, 14 to 13, what have you. So yes, independent review that way.
In the same token, they may indicate that these are out of line as it relates to supervisory status.
Mhm.
And, either take the option to cut wages back or just leave them catch up during the next cycle of budget.
But I see what Jacob, how does that affect the grant then if it's different than what we originally did the grant with? Is that what you're saying, Jacob?
That's an additional side of the complexity of this issue, because the grant is funding this, right? To be
Right.
funded with the grant. But the wage may change during the course of the use of the grant.
So after the wage study, you have to talk about what the cost of the wage study is. And then you have to look at how you're going to fund if there is a cost for any position,
Right.
how it would get funded, right? So it's not just, great, there's a number of funding sources throughout the county, right? And so each one has its own things to consider.
Right.
Parks has a millage. What does that impact? There's union contracts, there's memo of understanding, there's a lot of things after the results are delivered. The Board of Commissioners has to be, there's a number of things that has to happen after the results and administration and HR see it. So, and one of those is funding. So we would work with the departments and come forward usually with a grant adjustment, because there's a number of grants that have positions in them. And so other changes, I think Jason came forward with a grant adjustment today, and he made some changes. Well, there's a position also in that grant. And so if that, there would have to be an accommodation in some way to fund a change in that wage. If that, from somewhere, would have to fund any pay change for that position. It would have to be budgeted in some way,
So-
either by another change in the grant or another funding mechanism to pay for it. So that
Here-
those would all be managed through when we bring forward a recommendation.
So you're saying once a grant is awarded for 4 years, you can still change the wage of that person? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Get a
absolutely.
That-
grant adjustment.
Oh, yeah, lots of things.
Right.
change.
That just seems, because grants ain't locked in, then I take it.
No, they're not necessarily locked in,
Okay.
and there's other opportunities. I don't know if this group has been through a wage study for the employees in the
No.
past.
It was completed, I think, right before we were, yeah.
Okay. And what you'll get from the vendor that does it is just a list of all the positions that they studied and the rationale, whether that position should be elevated or not. If in fact, you may have a group of individuals that should be moved up into a supervisory spot based on the number of reports they have coming to them. So there's a variety of information that HR will use as recommendations to county administration, then eventually to the board.
Work to be done. Other questions?
Can I clarify just for this position, this is a structure change for us. So this is somebody who's already supervising. We are proposing to take the person who's supervising out from under the Director of Services for Adults with Mental Illness and creating their own department so that we're not siloing crisis services under responding to adults with mental illness. It's to be able to address the needs of all of the people that we serve. So this is a structure move for us.
And a necessary one, because we have to be in compliance with CCBHC, which is hugely important in CMH too.
Yeah, and this program is bringing in the CCBHC program through the demonstration, which is, it's different than a grant. It's more of a fee for service. And so the more we utilize it, the more dollars we're able to bring in through the state for that. So the better we can do that, the more revenue that we'll bring in for it.
Not seeing anything more. Ms. Sanchez, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Our final item today is the 2025 budget adjustments. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the FY 2025 budget adjustments per the attached schedule.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion on the adjustments? All right. Let's call the roll.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Juritzma,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Fantastic. Well, at this point in our meeting, we get to call upon our treasurer for a report. Welcome, Cheryl Clark.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you and I talked a little about my report and trying to condense it.
Yes.
Hopefully it looked better. So I just, instead of including all of the backup reports, I just did the graphs for you in my front page. So I wanted to go over the first graph was about the general fund monthly interest yield. So the interest yield for February was 3.5 for what we earned. The benchmark was 0.57. So you can see where we are earning well over benchmark. The other, so all of those are the same graphs that I have included. I did include one new graph that I wanted to start providing to you so that you can see how I am making sure that we are following our investment policy. So it's the last graph, and it's the Ottawa County portfolio percentages. So this is all of what we had in investments that we had invested, I take that, as of the end of February. So you can see that certificates of deposit are 21%. If you look at below, it says certificates of deposit need to be a maximum of 50% of the portfolio. So each of those, you'll see where we are meeting the requirements of the investment policy. Yes, I also included the OPEB reconciliation and our short-term bond strategies information that we normally get from Robinson Capital. Some new information that I included was special report from PFM, Asset Management. And one of the things that I was reading in there that I highlighted was the market reaction to both weaker economic data and threat of new tariffs. That's the thing that's going right now. Everybody's worried about the tariffs. And yields are going down. As a matter of fact, yesterday they went down by 10 basis points, and they're still down today. So we're just watching those, trying to make sure that we stay on top of them and try to get the best rates that we can on our investments as they come due. So the other one was meter public funds. One of the reasons the Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell recently mentioned that the Fed will most likely cut Fed fund rate only twice in 2025 to 0.25 cuts. This sticky inflation trend as compared to 1% last year. However, tariff concerns and less future federal government spending may slow economic growth and prompt a third cut. That's all just to let you know. I say this every time. If they cut the rates, we'll earn less. You have any questions for me on the financial? I did want to talk about something else. Yesterday, we did a press release. Myself, Eric DeBoer, our sheriff, and Sarah Matoysic, our prosecutor, on the scams going around that are scammers are trying to target people who are delinquent in taxes and facing foreclosure by the county treasurer. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up in this arena here, and hopefully people watching online, if you know of anyone at all that is facing, has delinquent taxes, even if they just became delinquent and they're just turned over to our office this month, have them contact our office. The sooner we can get them help, the sooner they can get their taxes paid. And then they don't have to worry about foreclosure. The fraudsters, they prey on homeowners and give them false promises. Some of them like to say they'll give them a loan. And then next thing you know, they're foreclosing on them. Or they'll say that they are with the county government and they're going to help them, and they're really not. And there's also phony loans out there that they're using to scam people. So the best way to protect themselves is to contact us, the county treasurer's office, so that we can help them. One thing that I wanted to note is that we had started in March 1st of 2024, when all of the properties rolled over from forfeiture into foreclosure, we had 331 parcels that went into foreclosure, or went into forfeiture. As of March 1st, we had 60 of those parcels left. As of today, we have 58. I'm going to be going out and visiting homes starting the rest of this week and next week, all the way up until the last day of March, trying to get people the paperwork so that they can get an exemption or a one-year extension, and then I won't have to foreclose on them. So, like I said, if you know anyone, please have them call our office. You can tell I'm very passionate about that. I don't want their home. So
Call the treasurer.
yes, please. Thank you.
Cheryl, how does that compare with other years?
Actually, it's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about the same.
Sure, excuse me. When the county forecloses on a home, what happens to that property?
The county becomes the owner of that property, and then we auction it off. We have 2 auctions. They're both online auctions. The first one is a minimum bid auction. The minimum bid is made up of the back taxes along with any fees that we have incurred on that property. And then the second auction is a no minimum bid auction. And so then people can, unfortunately, they would get the house and it would we would end up having to cover our losses out of the delinquent tax revolving fund.
Kent County has a nonprofit that they transfer these houses to. Do we have something like that?
No. We are looking into other options. As a matter of fact, next month when you see my annual report, you'll see that we are looking into trying to do a foreclosure, tax foreclosure assistance program, where we are currently contacting all of our local unit treasurers, assessors, supervisors, trying to get any information on agencies out there. I've been attending chamber meetings, trying to talk with nonprofits also that can help people with their, not just their back taxes, but also help them with their heat or any bills that they have to pay, because if they can get those bills paid, then they can take the money that they would normally pay their bills with and pay their taxes with that money instead. And also poverty exemptions. A lot of people don't know about the poverty exemptions, don't want to fill out the paperwork for the poverty exemptions. So trying to meet with the local township and city assessors to help out their residents get those poverty exemption forms filled out. And one of the programs we would offer is if they are in a poverty exemption program with the township or the city, then they automatically are considered a poverty exemption with the county. So we would automatically give them the extension, and they wouldn't have to contact us. We would just contact them right off the bat. So these are just some things that I'm looking into that we want to try to, get out there for people to get the help they need. So if you know of any organizations, please let me know.
What's the county do for bilingual or individuals that don't speak English? How do you get to them?
So we don't, if they call our office and they don't speak English, then we have LEUP. I have contacted LEUP, and they have said that they can help translate for us, at least Spanish. I think that there is a translator in the sheriff's department that we have used also in the past when they've called our office. That is one thing that I have met with LEUP on, trying to get our forms translated so that they're easier for other people to fill out. And if you have any suggestions on that, I would gladly take that also.
Well, one of the experiences I personally have dealt with is the renters are new to the community, don't know the language, don't trust people coming to the door.
Right.
Postings happen, they don't know what those postings mean, so they ignore them.
And the postings aren't for them, it's for the owner.
Exactly right, exactly right. And so there's an inherent distrust that happens, and then the system totally breaks down.
Right.
Because of language. I just hate to see that happen in Ottawa County.
Right.
And we just have to be aware that if we're doing postings on foreclosures or forfeitures or whatever else, as an example, or even knocking on doors, people may be inside, but they're not answering the door.
Right.
For all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And we just have to be, I know you are particularly sensitive to this issue. I know you are.
I am, yeah.
But we need to be mindful of those people who need that extra attention, who just are fearful, not necessarily because they've done anything wrong, but they're in a new environment that they're not
Right.
used to. So anyway, just keep up the good work, and I
Thank you.
know you're particularly sensitive to
Yes.
this. So
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Coming towards the end of our agenda here, and public comment is up next. And looking out towards the public, there is no public in the audience. So I would like to just acknowledge the hard work of our directors of many departments, our administrator and our deputy administrator, our board. We seem to be doing a good job, that I don't see any complainers out there, and they're trusting us to take care of the people's business. So want to close the meeting and adjourn us, and have a great day, everyone.
thank you.